Hello class and welcome to today's lecture. We're going to be talking about recruiting and labor markets. So let's get started. Recruiting is the process of generating a pool of qualified applicants. It seeks to improve the workforce equality and competitive advantage of the company by recruiting in people that have specific knowledge, skills, and abilities that can help the company develop a competitive advantage or maintain its competitive advantage. It's important to note that recruiting is different from selection. Recruiting is all the activities, the processes, the procedures that are involved in getting people to apply for the job, getting them in there to apply for the job and become qualified or vetted to know, hey, these are good people that would fit our company. Selection is when I already have a person who is qualified and now I want to put them in the right position. So selection is all about placing a person in the right place or position within the company, and recruiting is all about identifying people that can qualify for a particular job or position or for the company in general. Because a lot of times recruiters will recruit people for a company even if there's no exact position that's open. And that takes place a lot, for example, when it comes to college recruiting. So recruiting is all about getting folks to apply, and selection is all about placing them. When we look at recruiting, we need to understand that there are some costs to recruiting. This is why a lot of companies want employees to stay around for 2 to 3 to 5 years, because it costs money to recruit them. And the more senior the position, the more money it costs to recruit them. There's also a cost to having jobs be unfulfilled. So it's called an opportunity cost. Every position in a company ideally creates revenue for the organization. So if a position is sitting vacant, that means there's revenue, there's work that needs to be getting done that's not getting done. And that's a cost to the company as well. Oftentimes they'll balance out the two. If it's more expensive to recruit a person than it is the opportunity cost of that job not being fulfilled, they may delay or not hire for that position. Or if the opportunity cost to the company is much greater than the recruiting cost, then most likely they're going to go and try to recruit somebody for that position right away. Effective recruiting requires that people in HR, because HR department houses the recruiters, that they know the business and its industry. They identify key success factors, what's going to make people successful in the company. They promote the company brand, they cultivate relationships, and they can identify there's talent that's needed in the company, right? So, and also they use metrics to determine whether or not they are being successful. When it comes to training your recruiters, you need to make sure that they understand the skills that are necessary for the job that they're recruiting for, that they understand the importance of diversity, and also that they're ethical. So they follow the rules and they're being honorable in the work that they do. Now this chart here is important because it lays out the relationship between the labor force and how people who are ultimately selected for a job. You want to look at this chart, look at it carefully, and then follow it all the way down. Pay very close attention to what each section is called. So one, the labor force population represents everybody that's eligible to be hired for this particular job and can work in the job. It's basically, it's everybody in the United States. The applicant population is all the people who applied for the job. These are the people who actually submitted an application. The applicant pool is a list of people who have been selected as being qualified for the job. So this is the pool of people that we want. And as you can see, each box, each population size gets smaller and smaller as you proceed down this particular pathway. Then finally, you have the individuals selected for a particular position. So we could have literally thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in the applicant, the labor force population. And then maybe a couple hundred that applied for the job, down to 5 to 10 who are in the applicant pool, and then one individual or two that were ultimately selected. Also, you want to understand the relationship between unemployment and recruiting. When the unemployment rate is high, this means there's a lot of people out there looking for jobs. The cost of recruiting goes down. So it's an inverse relationship. When the unemployment rate is really low, meaning that most people are working, they're gainfully employed, recruiting costs go up. And you can imagine that this is because a lot of the good people are working already. And if I'm going to hire somebody for my job, I might have to steal them away from another company. And to do that, it's going to cost me more money. I may have to pay them more, offer them a bigger sign-on bonus, offer them, more lucrative moving expenses. So it's more expensive to recruit people when the unemployment rate is low. When it comes to getting your message out about hiring, you want to take certain things in consideration. One, you want to look at the methods you're going to use for recruiting people. You're going to use online, you're going to use face-to-face, you're going to use um, groups and fairs where you're going to go and promote your job, a job fair, something like that. You want to understand what's the message you're going to have in your recruiting. So you want it to appeal to the people, but you also want it to be honest. The qualifications of people who should be applying for the job, what level of education, how many years of experience, what skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities should they have, and then the administrative procedures that a person has to follow once they've applied for the job. As a recruiter, you want to understand all of those things and make decisions that fit into each of those buckets that make it easy to recruit people, and so that no part of this process is overly arduous, overly difficult for the person that's being recruited. There are a lot of challenges facing recruiters. One of the biggest challenges is finding people who are qualified. Many people assert that college graduates lack the key skills necessary to be successful in this global economy. So that's a big frustration and is frequently rated in the top 5 concerns that recruiters have when hiring people from college, is that they're coming out of college and they just don't have the skills and the knowledge that are needed to be successful. So they're finding themselves having to retrain individuals once they've hired them into the company. And that can be an expensive process because it takes longer for that college hire to become financially productive for the organization. And you can see this reflected in some of the articles that have been published recently about college students and recruiting college students. Finding qualified applicants is one of the most challenging aspects of a recruiter's job. And this is just in general. So we talked about it specifically for college students a moment ago, but this really is the challenge that they face overall. Now, when it comes to understanding the labor market, there are several different places where recruiters can go to recruit people. You can look to hire people that comes directly from a certain geography or a certain zip code, even if you wanted to. You could look in the global labor market. So we're going to look in other countries to find the right talent. You could also look at industry and occupational labor markets. You want to understand how those are playing out, where you can get people from. You may be talking about unions and different things like that. And then you also can look at the educational and technical labor markets to identify people for jobs. There are a number of important decisions that recruiters must make when it comes to recruiting people. And this chart outlines a good 8 of those decisions. So I'm not going to go over every choice because that will make the video incredibly long. So take time to pause it, look at these choices, and then go back and look at the textbook and read this particular section in the textbook. So one, you want to understand the image that you're putting forward. So as a recruiter and you're going to a job fair or you're going to meet candidates or interview with them, you want to dress appropriately to reflect your company. You want to make sure that your marketing materials, your information about the company is all noted in a professional manner. Your website, because people are going to go to the website to try to read up on your company. You want to make sure that it all reflects the image that you want to portray to potential new hires. You want to look at training of recruiters. So most times the recruiters exist within the human resources department. So they're going to get a lot of training on how to properly interview people, how to remove bias, how to follow EEO regulations and the likes. The problem comes in oftentimes with this is once you make it past the HR recruiters, the potential new hires are interviewing with the hiring manager. And the hiring manager is less trained on interviewing procedures and how to remove bias. So this is where you run into problems where inappropriate questions may be asked. Each interview is significantly different from the other interview candidates, so you can't compare the candidates apple to apple. So, but this is one of the major challenges. So companies want to make sure they're giving training not only to the HR managers, but also to the hiring managers. There's another concept called realistic job previews, and this is where you may bring a person on. It could be for a day or even longer. It could be a week or month, or however that company wants to structure it, but you're allowing the person to actually see what the job is going to be like before they officially commit to the position. This is really good in making sure that the company, the job, and the individual are a good fit for each other. It also gives the company an opportunity to confirm that the new hire has the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they require for that particular job. You can look at recruiting non-traditional workers. These may be people who are older or people who have different skill sets or people with a disability, to see how they fit their jobs, to see how they can fulfill the roles that the company needs. And you also could look at hiring internally versus externally. We're going to talk about this more a little bit later in the lecture, but bottom line is what that means is I have a vacant position in my company. I can go and hire someone who's already an employee, and I can recruit them from their current job in my company to this new position. So a job transfer. And oftentimes it's either a lateral move or it's a job promotion. There's a lot of benefits associated with that. Or I could go outside the company and hire someone who is completely outside of the organization. And there's benefits and drawbacks to that as well. We'll talk about that in some upcoming slides. It's important in all of your recruiting activities that we follow the law, particularly when it comes to diversity and equal opportunity rights for individuals. So make sure the recruiters are aware of EEO regulations, that they're properly trained on those regulations. And many companies take the step of actually targeting and trying to get people that are diverse, people of diverse backgrounds, okay, whether it be minorities, education, age, because that adds a rich texture to the organization. It allows them to communicate and understand their customer base, which is inevitably going to be diverse if you're talking about the United States. So to meet this need, many companies will specifically target diversity new hires. So they have specific campaigns targeted at African Americans or Hispanic Americans because they want those types of individuals qualified working for their company. So to that extent, they may go and hire at the National Hispanic Association for MBAs. They may go to the National Black MBA Association or hire people directly from the PhD Project, which is an organization designed to help minorities earn their PhDs in business. Some tools that researchers use to market their jobs would be blogs, e-videos, Twitter. There's a lot of e-videos. You can click the link here in the PowerPoint slides and go to that video, but a lot of companies have videos that talk about the culture of their organization, the types of jobs that they have, what it's like to work in their company, what it's like, what the fellow coworkers are like, basically job promotion videos to help sell their company. And then always Twitter, Facebook, and the likes. These are also technologies that recruiters use to promote their company. You can see here monster.com, P&G. Here's a P&G website right here, showcasing a number of their videos that they have about what it's like to work at P&G, Procter & Gamble. myjobhunter.com, where people can go to find jobs that are being posted. Recruiters are using all of these job boards, professional websites like LinkedIn to promote the jobs and try to find quality candidates. Honestly, the way things have shifted in today's job market, more people are using internet-based recruiting activities than ever before. Social networking websites like Facebook. Another point you want to be aware of is that recruiters will go on to a person's Facebook profile and read their profile before making hiring decisions. It's not an uncommon thing. They just want to know that, am I getting a good person for my company? So you want to be careful if you're out in the job market of putting up things that are really extremely biased or controversial, or showing yourself in a way that is extremely unprofessional. You want to be careful of putting that up on your Facebook profile or other public profiles, because that could very easily prevent you from getting a job offer. There are a number of legal issues when it comes to internet recruiting. Here are a few. I won't go through all of these once again because the video is already long enough, but take time to pause and to read each of these and understand them. Go and tie it back to the textbook so you can read more about this section. But you want to, as a recruiter, you want to avoid misusing screen software. You want to collect only the federally required information, so don't over collect information that could promote bias towards applicants. You don't want to exclude any protected classes. So this is where you got to be careful, because your recruiting efforts could be designed in such a way, either intentionally or unintentionally, to exclude or prevent people from diverse backgrounds seeing your advertisements. So that way you're getting a biased audience applying for it. You want to identify whether people are real applicants or not. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there with the online capabilities who are just applying for jobs who have no intention of taking a job. It's just something that they do. They're kicking the tires. They want to see if they can, what they can get if they were to go out, on the marketplace, but they have no intention of taking a job. And you also want to maintain privacy and confidentiality. It's really easy to obtain personal information from people online, and you need to make sure that you have the proper securities and procedures in place within your company so that private information doesn't get out in the wrong hands. Here's some of the advantages and disadvantages of internet-based recruiting. It saves time. It saves money. You get more people applying for your job, and it also allows you to be more selective in who you're targeting. These are all advantages of internet recruiting. Some of the disadvantages are, while you get a lot of people, a lot of them are unqualified. So you have a lot more work to go through trying to scrub out the people that are not qualified versus those who are. And it's really easy for someone simply to upload a resume or click a link, click a button that says, I'm interested in this job, please look at me. And they know they're only tangentially qualified for the role. But they figure, I'll apply for everything, so I'll get something. And as a recruiter, you now have to wade through all of that. So it's additional work on your HR staff. Many people, as I mentioned earlier, they're just not even serious about looking for employment. They're just out kicking tires or testing the water. Access is limited or unavailable to some applicants. So some people may be really great. They may not have internet access. Okay, and privacy and discrimination issues are magnified because of the online platform. For example, it makes it easy to discriminate against a person because of their name. There are certain names where we can hear them and say, yeah, that's probably a black person, or yes, that's probably a Hispanic person. So it's easy to discriminate against them, even though you don't see them, but because we're looking at their name or their background or where they went to school, things like that. Earlier, we mentioned recruiting decisions, and one of the decisions was whether to recruit from outside the company or inside the company. In this slide, we're looking at external recruitment. So I have a job opening in my company, and I'm going to hire somebody outside of my firm in order to come and work for the company, in order to fulfill this position. So some things you want to, places you want to consider going if you're going to look for people outside. Media sources, employment agencies, great place to find workers. Job fairs, educational institutions, these are your colleges, labor unions. So I can go to the trade union for plumbers and look to hire a plumber full-time, or other competitive recruiting sources. These are places where you can go to try to identify candidates who are outside your company to come and work for you. So special considerations you want to think about when it comes to college recruiting. So you guys are all in college right now, so you understand you have job fairs and you have recruiters who are targeting college students, who are trying to get new college students to apply for internships or full-time jobs. Jumping on the other side of the fence, you want to think about this from the recruiter perspective and what's important for them to be aware of. One, they want to know, they need to be aware of the budget that their company has set aside for recruiting activities, and also what are the pay levels that are appropriate for college students. Experience with prior college graduates and interns, so you want to look at, has that person been experienced? They have internships, this is important. You want to look for college graduate programs that may have specialty focuses. So if you're hiring for supply chain, go to a college that has a specialty program in supply chain. Look for work with colleges that have good, solid reputations of hiring previous students, and those students did a good job. There's a lot of times where a company may have a bad experience with one or two students from a university and then stop recruiting for that entire university because those one or two people ruined the relationship. Keep an eye on what job openings are currently opening in the firm and what's appropriate for a new college hire. And then also work very closely with the college placement offices to identify quality candidates for your positions. Now let's take a look at internal. So as I mentioned earlier in the lecture, internal hiring is when I'm looking at fulfilling a position that's vacant but I'm going to pick somebody that's already in my company. So one big thing that you do as a recruiter is you have a job posting board. Just like we have monster.com for external hires, pretty much every Fortune 500 company has an internal job posting board, which means that all the jobs that are open that they want an internal candidate for, or they could be considering both internal and external, right? But there's a job board that's posted. I remember when I worked at IBM and Dell, you can go on that job posting board and look at all the jobs that are currently available in the firm, find the ones that you're qualified for, and submit your applications. Generally speaking, though, just as a word of advice, you want to make sure your manager is aware that you're applying for jobs in the company before you start applying for jobs in the company. Because one of the first things that the hiring manager does when he gets a qualified applicant is to call the current manager and say, hey, do you know that Dr. Vesey was applying for this position? And if your if your current manager says, no, I didn't know that, that is a big red flag. And you're very likely not going to get the position, and you're going to develop a certain reputation within the company, which is not a good thing. So open and honest communication is super important. But this is how people get a lot of job promotions and job transfers. Once you've been in your position for 2 to 3 years, you want to talk to your manager, tell them that you're ready to make a change. Your manager agrees with it, and then you start applying for jobs on the job board, or your manager would start having conversations with other hiring managers kind of behind the scenes to lay the path for you to make that transition. You want to look at employee referrals. You want to look at former employees. So these are people who used to work for you. You want to bring them back. So maybe they retired or they left the company for a number of reasons. You want to go out and find them and bring them back. So what happened, Dell had massive layoffs when I was there. They laid off the entire marketing department. And they decided to hire a firm, an outside firm, to run all Dell's marketing activities. It worked well for me because I was also leaving anyway to go to get my PhD. So I got a nice severance package as I was starting my PhD program. Well, about a year and a half into my PhD program, apparently that marketing department did not work out very well. So Dell was calling back former employees, and I got a phone call saying, hey, would you come back and work for us? Because we need to get our marketing department staff back up again. And you also have employee databases. We talked about earlier about companies doing a skills audit where they're looking at all the KSAs of their employees and putting that information in the database. Now you can go to that same database to try to proactively find people who fit your job requirements and then tap them and say, hey, are you interested in applying for this particular position in the company? As always, there are some benefits and drawbacks with internal hiring. I'm not going to go over every bullet on this slide, once again, for time's sake. So take time to pause the video and read through these. But some advantages would be that it creates great employee morale. People feel like they have an opportunity to move up. Recruitment costs are lower. You also know more about the individuals and their work history, their knowledge. You could talk to people who have an intimate knowledge of this individual, their managers, their coworkers, to really ascertain are they a good fit for that new position. It could help when it comes to succession planning and just planning out the overall future direction of the firm, particularly when it comes to high-level, very senior positions. Some of the drawbacks is inbreeding. And what we mean by this is that if someone's been working for the company 5 to 10 years, they're kind of indoctrinated with the culture of that company. They get it. They know how to be successful in the company. They know what to say. They know how to say it. They know how to persuade people. But it doesn't mean they're coming up with new, unique, and innovative ideas. It also means that they may be less willing to take a risk to challenge the existing hierarchy or the existing product structure, something that an outsider may do inadvertently. The outsider just doesn't know all the rules yet. So they're bringing ideas from their previous jobs. They're making suggestions. They're pointing things out that other people who know the culture may not have done otherwise. Employees may engage in political infighting for promotions, and this is a big one, right? So let's say you got one job opening, but you have 2 people on a certain team that are both applying for that job. Well, they could engage in some political activities to sabotage one another, which can create feelings of animosity, frustration, anxiety within the company. So those are all some disadvantages of recruiting internally. When you're building a recruiting ad, it's important that you include some basic information. So one, you want to include information on the job and the applicant process. You can read these bullets here to understand exactly what those are. Job responsibilities, You may include the pay range in there. A lot of companies don't exactly do that, but where to submit or how to apply for the job, and the closing date, when you're going to stop hiring people for this particular position. Additionally, you want to include information about the qualifications for the job. This would say your years of experience, key attributes, knowledge, skills, and abilities that person should have. It would also say information about like their educational experience and things along those lines. And then lastly, you want to have information about the company. Specifically, you want to highlight the company as an EEO employer. So they're going to value diversity and treat people fairly. You want to show any unique characteristics of the organization or recognition that you want to promote to say, hey, we're a good company, consider us for these reasons. All of these components go into what makes an effective recruiting ad. So here is where I would encourage you to go to monster.com and just do a job search and take a look at some of the job recruitment ads that are posted in monster.com and see how well they line up against this set of criteria that the ads should have. You'll find that some ads do a really good job of it and that some ads don't. Recruiting is an important part of HR. What's also important is to make sure that you're measuring the effectiveness of your recruiting. So you're engaging in a lot of activities to find this applicant pool, get people to apply for the position, and scrutinize, make sure you got the right people that are applying. You're spending a lot of the firm's money. You're hiring people and paying them high salaries. You also want to track how good of a job am I doing recruiting? Am I getting the right people? These are 4 areas that you can focus on when it comes to evaluating the effectiveness of your recruiting activities. So evaluate the quality and the quantity of people that you're hiring. Evaluate recruiting satisfaction. So this could be done by having a simple survey going out to the hiring managers and asking them how satisfied were they with their experience in working with HR recruiters to get their new hires. Evaluate the cost of recruiting. So really look at how much money you're spending per person to get them in. If you're spending $200,000 to recruit somebody who's going to get paid $25,000 a year, there's a problem. However, if you're spending $30,000 to recruit somebody who's going to be making $60,000 a year, then that may be a bit expensive, but it certainly is more in line than the former example I gave you. Evaluating how long it takes to fill job openings. This is another way. The quicker we can fill positions, the more money the company saves. And that's because you're not losing money due to that opportunity cost that we mentioned earlier. Here's some additional metrics that you can use to evaluate the effectiveness of your recruiting. You could do a satisfaction analysis. So this is where you ask the person who got hired to the company, how satisfied were they with their experience with the recruiters and with HR. You could have other ratios, selection ratios, acceptance ratios, success-based ratios. Any number of these things could be used to help evaluate the effectiveness of your recruiting. That wraps it up for this lecture. If you have any questions, be sure to send me an email. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.